Yuka Okkotsu's curse technique. What's going on with that? Let's talk about it.
All right, first of all, shout out to Silv for asking me about this today, and he just wanted to know what my thoughts on what Yuka's technique might be. And he shares his idea that what if she has the construction technique in order to kind of parallel the relationship between Maki and Mai, because Maki had a heavenly restriction and her twin sister Mai had the construction technique. Tsurugi has a heavenly restriction, so maybe his sister Yuka has the construction technique. And while I say I do think that's at least possible, it probably wouldn't be my first guess, primarily because Yuka and Tsurugi are not twins. And not that Silv said they were twins or even thinks they're twins, but a lot of people are still confused about that. So if she does have the construction technique, it would be more so like an homage or a parallel as opposed to like an exact reoccurrence of the Maki and Mai situation. However, the reason I say that she could have the construction technique, even though this doesn't look anything like that, is because this may not be her actual technique. Because in the days since the chapter has come out, there's been a few people talking about the translations, and it does appear that in this moment it is referenced that she is just using martial arts with cursed energy imbued with her cursed energy trait. For anyone who doesn't remember, a cursed energy trait is just an inherent property of your cursed energy, completely separate from your actual technique. An example would be Kashimo's cursed energy trait, which is essentially like lightning, the way it would like spark and shock, and he kind of had that pseudo sure hit effect where the positive charge would attract to the negative charge, but that had nothing to do with his mythical beast amber technique. So that's the implication of the phrasing used here, that this isn't necessarily her cursed technique, but rather martial arts infused with her cursed energy trait. Now, what that trait exactly is still anyone's guess. Perhaps these like gash marks left on his arm are some sort of clue, but really we have nothing else to glean from this at this point. Now, all that being said, this could still be some facet of her technique, or at least hold some clue to what it is, right? Because one thing I noticed is the way her fingers get very claw-like, and I actually went back through the chapter to see if her fingers always look like that, and it's kind of hard to tell, like, because especially in just like normal shots where there's no fighting or aggression going on, like it just might not be drawn in such a way that you could even tell, right? One thing is that she does have long nails, but still, like in a panel like this versus this, they look clearly different. So her hands becoming like that, could they be part of her technique? Could they be part of her trait? Part of her martial arts style? Like, again, it's really hard to say. But one interesting thing I've seen some people speculate is like, what if she has the 10 shadows and this is like a new manifestation of the divine dogs? Similarly to how we saw Sukuna wield it in a different way than Megami, what if this generation she's not like fully summoning it, but using their claw attack, if you will? Now, I certainly don't think there's enough there to draw that conclusion, but I do think it's a really interesting idea, and it would make for a cool little duo here of the Zenin clan heirs, right? The heavenly restriction and the 10 shadows, like the two crown jewels of that bloodline. And then the other main thing I've seen people speculate is what if she has some version of the copy technique just like her grandfather. And while I certainly think that's at least possible because she's his direct descendant, I don't think it's the most likely, only because Rika's ring is still like front and center and seems to be very important in this miniseries. And I would imagine that that ring has literally become a cursed tool that still contains Rika. And if so, it seems like it would be a little double dip to have like Rika and also the copy technique on her own. Now, maybe she like doesn't have a technique and she will utilize copy through Rika kind of the same way Yuta did. And I don't want to get too lost in the weeds here because like Rika was basically considered Yuta's curse technique and that's how he had copy. So like the same thing might be true of Yuka. But if so, she's going to need the ring to do that, right? Which she currently doesn't have, which means she wouldn't be doing that in this first chapter with whatever she was doing with her claws, right? So anyway, not to get too long-winded here. If Yuka does end up having or using copy, I think it'll be through the ring and it wouldn't be like her inherit technique. Really, at the end of the day, right now we just lack the information to say anything concrete one way or the other. Like maybe this is some facet of her technique, or maybe it's just martial arts infused with cursed energy. But I would love to hear all of y'all's ideas and theories down in the comments. Then next up today, Sage sent me in some thoughts, and y'all can pause to read the entire thing here, but he's essentially speaking on natural cause deaths within JJK, like how Yuta died of old age, right? Could there actually be something a bit more sinister under that? And this is actually something I was talking about with someone else recently in regards to vengeful cursed spirits. Basically how, any powerful sorcerer, it's kind of a risk if you just allow them to die by natural causes, because what if a vengeful cursed spirit is born? So I certainly think that it's at least possible when someone, is very close to death, if like people are aware of that, like from a natural cause, that they might just go ahead and, euthanize them with cursed energy just to wipe away any chance of having another Rika on our hands. But also, I don't think it's necessarily like ingrained into the society on like a systematic level, let's say, because vengeful cursed spirits are incredibly rare still. Like obviously sorcerers have a higher chance of making them, but it's not as if just anyone that dies of natural causes will become a vengeful cursed spirit, right? But again, with somebody on the level of Yuta or some of these other, like sorcerers from the original JJK that are really powerful or have a lot of cursed energy, maybe it's not a risk you'd take. And so, maybe there is some sort of system in place. I don't know. And then finally for today, y'all, I got this question here from Avery, who asked if Sukuna was scared when Gojo came back. And I'm assuming you're referring to the moment when Gojo bust out of the prison realm and came and confronted them. And no, I don't think so. I honestly don't think Sukuna ever feared Gojo in that way. Like he wasn't afraid of taking that fight. However, of note, we do know that Gojo made him feel nervous for the first time in 1,000 years. And there was also that moment where he was clearly at least somewhat afraid. Now, Sukuna fans are going to push back on that when Gojo fires off that red and he screams at Maharaga to help him out. So, Sukuna was definitely not coasting on easy street throughout their fight, but I certainly don't think that he ever feared Gojo as like a threat and was like worried about fighting him prior to fighting him. Like, you got to remember, this is the King of Curses. He was like never truly challenged in his life until he fought Gojo. So he ended up respecting Gojo, and like I said, he felt nervous during their fight against him, but he wasn't ever scared of him, if that makes sense. Okay, as soon as I finished recording that bit, I had an epiphany, and I was like, oh wait, what if he meant this moment right here, toward the end of Shinjuku, where Sukuna thought that Gojo had come back? And honestly, most of the fandom did as well, where we see this silhouette and Sukuna is like, it's the one he buried with his own hands, the ghost of the strongest. So if you're referring to this moment, then yes, I do think it's fair to say that Sukuna was scared here. If only because he knew he would be cooked at that point, right? Because this is a Sukuna that is running on fumes. Like, he's got almost nothing left in the tank at this point. So if Gojo did return in this moment, and wasn't even full power, but like a third power, then he would easily just defeat him. So yes, if this is what you were referring to, I do think it's fair to say that, his pants would have been a little bit heavy. Anyways, y'all, that's going to do it for this one. But to round us back around, please let me know your thoughts on what you think Yuka's curse technique might be. And as always, thank you for watching.